If you were 2-7, you'd be in a bad mood too.
Whoa, he has trouble with the snap, and the ball is free. And he hits the upright again. That's impossible.
Get your mouth shut. Get your mouth shut. Jerk.
The Bears' season's going to end on a double doink.
If worms had machine guns, then birds wouldn't be scared of them.
Welcome to the Limp Ditkas podcast at limpditkas.com. This is actually our, full episode. We did episode 0 the other night. This is a little trailer as a teaser to tell you what the fuck we're actually doing here. Hopefully get on some podcasting platforms before we get to a big launch. Currently we are on Spotify and some weird platform I never heard of, but eventually we will be on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, everywhere you can find a podcast. So that should be populating shortly. So this is episode 1. To recap, we are just a couple of Chicago pricks who are united in our hatred of the Bears and University of Michigan football. So I just want to say I'm going to attack this podcast with the enthusiasm unknown to mankind. That's just an example of a ridiculous Jim Harbaugh quote that I'm sure we'll be able to sprinkle in from time to time because that dude is fucking crazy and says crazy things all the time. So we're in general, we are focused on our favorite teams across the NFL and college football. I'm a Michigan State fan and unfortunately a Detroit Lions fan. Pete is a Notre Dame fan, of course, and not so, of course, is the Dallas Cowboys. If you want a longer explanation for that, you can check out our episode 0, the very first podcast. I think we'll just jump into the latest news, if you'd like. Last night was the NFC East division battle between the Eagles and Giants. Did you watch much of that game?
You know what? The options were just real quick. So, the debate, no interest. Already know what I'm doing there. And even if I did know what I was doing, I don't think I'd watch the debate. I'd rather just read about views and that from people who know more about it than me.
I forgot it was on, so that worked out well.
Then we'll be covering this in for those of you who may only be listening to this, we also do a baseball podcast, Major League A-Holes. We'll be covering the much covered, no one gets a day off in the playoffs this year in baseball. And I thought I was going to be able to watch the World Series last night, but unfortunately there was a day off in the World Series, which I was like, okay, like I'm trying to find the game last night. So
you had to watch football.
After watching the Bruce Springsteen documentary for his new album on Apple Plus, I drifted into the NFL LEast, which
This is your fourth best option at this point.
I drift into the NFL LEast matchup because if ever that was appropriate for this division, it is at an all-time low. 6 wins.
6-19-1, I think, is the combined division records, and they only got the 6th win last night because 2 division foes are voting against each other. So hilarious.
I mean, the amount, I don't know. I didn't look at the final numbers for the amount of 3 and outs in this game, but this is like a football game from the 80s where you're like, why do I watch football? Specifically, kind of like a Bears game from the early 80s, late 70s. I mean, so it was pretty horrendous. There ended up being a decent amount of scoring in the end. I, however, didn't make it that long because after 4 3 and outs in a row, I realized the new Borat movie had launched on Amazon Prime.
I got to check that out. That's probably a better option. I probably, if I had thought about that, I probably would have switched the channel after I saw, what's his name, Daniel Jones.
Oh yeah, this is the play of the game.
Who had the most ridiculous sweep bootleg run option that had a hole that was 15 yards wide.
What a great call!
Yeah, for that to work so well, and for him to run up the field for about 70 yards was just incredible until he inexplicably
Balls.
just fell down at the 10-yard line.
Oh my
That
God.
if that doesn't like explain the NFC East in one play, I don't know what does. It's just perfect. The other part of that is I'm actually at my mom's house here in Michigan this week, but my mom asked me what the name of the Giants quarterback was after that happened. I'm like, I think it's David Johnson. Oh no,
Right.
it's Daniel Jones. I don't even know anything about these fuckers. It made me laugh at my own ignorance.
I mean, the reaction too late as the broadcast went on, they had the capture of the defense on the sideline just pointing on the screen at laughing. Saquon Barkley was up in the one of the boxes, like you couldn't see him laughing because he had his mask on, but he was
Right.
commenting about it. I mean, and the biggest deal about him falling over was they said on the broadcast right after it happened, they have like the worst percentage once they get within like the 10-yard line of scoring a touchdown. So it could have almost resulted in not even scoring a TD on what was a sure TD. I mean, kudos to the offensive coordinator for doing like a trips left on that on the far side, and then calling that play to where they totally faked out the Giants defense. I was like, holy shit, that's going to be like an incredible touchdown run. And then he just freaking falls over. I did see Patrick Mahomes did tweet that he thought the same thing probably would have happened to him for the amount of yards you had to run. That
was a long run, but it was just comical. No one was around him, and he just collapsed. Like you said, their red zone efficiency is among the worst, which is explain their terrible record. So it was almost like a death sentence. Like if he didn't make the touchdown right there, that they were not going to score. They did actually score a touchdown.
They did score. Yeah, they scored a rushing TD on there.
So all's well that ends well, I guess. But
except they ended up losing. They lose in the end. But
that gets us to that gets us to your Cowboys in this NFC East are running away with the division.
Not now. I think they're in a deadlock tie.
Is it
with
2-4 record? Is that where you guys are?
But we're 2-3, so we probably have the percentage there right now because we have to play our 6th game on Sunday against the Redskins. So there's going to be a 7th win.
Sorry, mind you. What team? What team are you playing?
Oh, I'm sorry. Terrible. I'm a terrible person. Terrible. No. Bad Pete. The NFL football, the Washington Football Club.
Football team.
Yeah.
I think they need to change their name to Washington Football Club. So it'd be Washington FC. So it would sound like a European soccer team. And those are really popular. So why not? Just keep it.
I'm confused to why they're not like the Senators already or...
I've actually heard they're thinking about keeping the name at least for next year, possibly mainly because of the logistics. It takes forever to get licensing and logos and all that shit put together. But I also think Dan Snyder kind of just wants to thumb his nose at the NFL. If he took away my team name that he never wanted to get rid of, he finally bowed to public pressure this summer. Now he's just going to keep it ridiculous. Just call it the football team. I actually like it. I think it's great. Why not? Certainly better than the racist name they had for 87 years or whatever before that. So
big matchup, another big NFC least matchup, Cowboys Redskins, which normally
folks.
no matter usually the teams, there's usually like a couple. The way the NFC East has worked, it's almost like college football. Like every 3 to 4 years, you have a team that rises because everyone's a senior now, and that's how it's been really weird in the NFC East. Like 1 year the Cowboys are 13-3, and then they bring back the same squad and they're 9-7. Like, did a bunch of people graduate or something, and then suddenly they got to start over? But they are bringing back the same squad, and this division sometimes is 2 or 3 teams well over 500. But the last few years, you have been able to win this division with a 9-7 record. We might see the first time I'm trying to
Below
think when it happened.
500?
It was it was the West way back in the day.
Uh,
The AFC West,
I want
right?
to no. I think it just happened in the NFC. I feel like it was the West. It was like
The Carolina.
Seattle or
yeah.
San Francisco. I forget who it was, but
They're
yeah,
like a
they were like
7-9 record
yeah,
or
they're like
something like that.
yeah, or 7-8-1 or something ridiculous
Yeah.
like that.
So we could
I think
very
that's very
well
likely.
see that occur.
Well, the reason that's gonna occur is I think somehow the Cowboys are still the best team in that division. Best being in inverted commas. The
Relative to the division.
right but what I mean obviously the biggest thing to talk about this season for the Cowboys is the gruesome injury to Dak Prescott, which you and I were kind of in a pre-show brainstorming session this morning, texting back and forth. You had a great idea, or maybe we both came up with it at the same time. But I think once a week or whenever it comes up, we'll have an award for the worst injury called the Limpy Award, Limpy of the Week, maybe.
The Limpy Award of the Week, and
yeah, that
since
Dak
this is
Prescott
our
would. Yeah, Dak would definitely get that if we were podcasting 2 weeks ago or whenever it happened, because that was fucking gross.
I think we still give him probably the inaugural Limpy Award just because this is our first time to be able to talk about it, and I don't recall any gruesome injuries last week. Yes,
yeah.
he may win at the end of the season. He may win the Limpy
of the year award. Oh, I like that. Yeah,
I think our end of the season show could be Limpy Awards for like terrible plays. I think Daniel, what's his name again? Daniel Jones is gonna win. Is already the front runner of botched easy touchdown Limpy Award. But then I was thinking, Ryan, that on our end of the year show, kind of like the ESPYs, we could give out the big Ditka Awards to outstanding performance. So
you're gonna call it the Ditka Award, but I can't even say that.
The Ditka Award would be Ditka. Someone who was like a jerk for the week. So there's lots of different Ditka Awards.
We've got a lot of. It's a brand new podcast. We've got a lot of ideas ruminating. So we'll flesh this out over time.
Look for these future outstanding things to come to fruition. But so here, let's start with the Cowboys' problems.
Yeah,
that I feel in a row outside of losing Dak, because honestly, I trust the ginger.
Okay,
the problem.
Well, this is really what I want to talk about with the Cowboys is your quarterback situation. So why don't you address your other issues and then let's get back to your quarterback situation.
Okay, so number one is turnovers, and when your star running back is one of the issues with the turnovers, I mean, you can say what you want about probably the next glaring issue, which is not that the defense isn't as bad as they look. The reason the defense has been so bad is they decided in a COVID season when you have no preseason to work things out to bring in a whole new defensive scheme that these guys have not been able to execute in the real field of play until the season started. They moved from a 4-3 to a 3-4. Different stances, which I was unaware of this until this season, that because of the style of defense, you get into like there's 3-point and 4-point and all these different stances you get in. But because of because of trying to get off the ball quicker, you get in a different stance. So all these defenders are now in a different stance than they've been in for the last 3 years under Ron Marinelli. Mm-hmm. So the defense is a work in progress that I honestly think towards the middle end of the season, you're going to start to see, I'm not going to say huge strides, but you're going to see improvements.
All right.
But the biggest issue besides their turnovers and star players turning over the ball is the offensive line. Is none of the veterans are there. They're all injured now. Two season-ending injuries.
Yikes.
Now this now presents a problem for the quarterback situation, because Andy Dalton, well, he's not he's not. Well, how can I put? He's a pocket passer, but he can still get out of the
He's
pocket.
not good. Not that good.
He's and he can manage a game, but
his audition as Cowboys quarterback did not go so well.
But to put that on him is a whole different story because they had to get out of their game plan again because Zeke turned the ball over twice and they were down again 14-0 before anyone could even settle into the fucking ball game. And
so overall, you're comfortable with the Red
I'm
Rocket,
comfortable
Red
with
Rifle, Red Rocket,
the Red Rifle.
I like Red Rocket.
In Ginger, I trust
Red Rocket
for the moment. Red Rocket, because when he had one of his best seasons ever when he had the kind of offensive weapons around him that the Cowboys have. The Cowboys are their own worst enemy, though, right now.
All right.
I mean, all the games that they lost were all really not because the offense is bad. The offense came back in every one of those games, but the defense has been put in some really shit situations of having to play on the other side of the 50 for the first start of the possession. And chances are when you're on the other side of the 50, unless you're the fucking Eagles, Giants, or Redskins, you're probably gonna freaking score
fortunately some points.
Yeah, I know. Fortunately, we do. I mean, how good is the Cowboys offense? While Dak was there, I mean, Dak is still the leading passer in the NFL today. He still is the leading passer. He played 3.5 games. We're into week 6 now. He's still leading the NFL in passing. Matt Ryan should jump him this week, but he's still going to be in the top 5 for another week or two, probably.
Well, there's a reason why Matt Ryan's going to jump him, and that's because the Falcons are playing my Detroit Lions this week. So that might be a good segue. Although I did want to talk a little bit about your quarterback situation again.
Yeah.
I guess your logical explanation kind of blows my argument out of the water and blows a lot of people's arguments out of the water. So you came with more insight than I thought. This might be a better podcast than I thought. You've got the analytical side of football that I don't have, possibly. But what you said makes a lot of sense. Why you can't blame the first of all, it's one loss under the Andy Dalton regime. But it made sense what you said about how it wasn't all his fault that they put him in a bad situation that way. But the prevailing thought nationally and maybe certainly in Detroit, I don't know if you've heard much about this, but is that the crazy Jerry Jones needs to make a move and trade for a big name quarterback because Dalton is just not going to be able to get it done. That may or may not play out over time, but although I think the trade deadline is next week.
Yeah, there were already some minor movements, some deals happened yesterday.
So I almost think this week is a pivotal moment for Dalton in his career if he has a shaky game, or maybe, like you said, it plays out again where he just didn't have a chance because his team put him in a terrible situation. But the topic du jour of Detroit Sports Talk Radio, at least the last 2 weeks since the moment Prescott got hurt, is that the Cowboys need to trade with the Lions for Matt Stafford, son of the Lone Star State. I think Jerry's, I don't know how much talk there, like actual evidence there is of this, but everyone just assumes Jerry has a hard on for Matt Stafford. That may or may not be true, but it seems to make some logical sense. Detroit wants it more than anything because we want a tank. And we'd love to get some draft picks out of Stafford. But basically, we're done. Everyone's done with Stafford. A Lions fan that is still on the Stafford bandwagon is just hopeless, I think. Yeah, I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt because, the team has let him down much similar ways to how Dalton was let down last week. But you can't blame it all on Stafford. But at the same time, he's been here for 13 fucking years, and it's not going to happen. And the current state of the team obviously needs a complete overhaul. Removal of the GM, removal of the coach, removal of the quarterback would be the first step in that. These will be topics I will be bringing up often in this podcast, I think, down the road. But So I think it's wishful thinking on Detroit's part, trying to get Jerry to do another crazy deal to pick up Stafford. There is some history of that. I think that might be a little bit overblown about how crazy Jerry is. He did trade a number one draft pick to the Lions for Roy Williams several years ago.
Yeah, that worked out well.
Yeah. So there is some precedent for that, but it sounds like you wouldn't even be interested in Stafford.
No, and the funny thing about that whole rumor is, as that rumor was transpiring, the Cowboys did try to get your practice squad quarterback, and his name escapes me, but he started 5 games for you last year at the end of the season because of Stafford's injury. And it forced, I guess, he didn't make the 53-man roster. I mean, I looked up the stats. He had like a 64 QB rating, 4 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 0-5. But the Cowboys,
good.
Yeah, well, the Cowboys wanted him as the backup. Maybe he's a little more mobile than Dalton, and they may have liked that or seen something they liked, or sometimes teams see something they can correct. It forced the Giants to sign him from the Lions to sign him from the practice squad. Now he's on the roster because they didn't want the Cowboys to take him.
Wow.
He was out of Purdue in 2019.
Who is this guy?
I can't think of his name.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank too, but we'll get better at this.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I view that as the Cowboys are sniffing around our roster, so maybe there is some smoke and fire to that, but I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know. It doesn't.
I don't really care about a practice squad guy too much.
I mean, I guess I guess in theory, I mean, the Lions would probably be willing to part with Stafford for draft picks just for the Cowboys to absorb that contract, correct?
Well,
is that the
contract's not the
what?
issue. No, the contract not the. Actually, I think the Lions still have like $30 million in cap space, so they have been judicious with their cap space. So the money is not the issue. It's literally just, I think the fans want it more than anything, just to restart. Like the way the Lions get out of this. I mean, we talked about it with our baseball podcast with the White Sox for years, mired in mediocrity.
Yeah, that's true.
The spiral that they're in, or the conveyor belt kind of thing, where they run around middle of the pack at most, bottom to middle of the pack. It does not lead to long-term success.
Yeah,
obviously seen. So the first step in that complete reconstruction plan is get rid of the quarterback. Then we've got to get rid of the coach and the GM. But the immediate need would get rid of Matt Stafford and start over with whatever. That's the problem. Like,
I just don't see the Cowboys like. So then next year he would essentially be the backup quarterback. Like it seems.
Well, what is the Dak contract situation? Because he's under.
Well, they're just going to franchise tag him again.
Unless could they get Stafford and use that as leverage against Dak? Because I know those contract negotiations have been heated, to say the least. I mean, since they had to franchise him, they haven't been able to come up with a long-term deal. Would they be using Stafford potentially as a leverage against Dak to get him to sign for a lesser deal? Or I don't know. I mean,
I don't know. I don't know how much.
The bottom line is,
how much leverage do you think Stafford really brings, though?
Well, here's my question: How do you view Matt Stafford versus Andy Dalton? Do you think that's an upgrade? Even, I mean, I
don't know. I want to see if Dalton
I think it is. I think it's obvious it is, but I don't know how much of an upgrade.
I feel like Stafford has real problems reading the defense, and Dalton does not have great problems reading the defense.
I don't think their numbers are even close. I think I agree. Maybe. I mean, the famous nickname is Pat Statford. I mean, he pads his stats so much in garbage
time. Yeah.
And he makes just critical error after critical error in crunch time his entire career. That's why they have 0 playoff wins under him. So I could see why you wouldn't be jumping at the chance to get Matt Stafford. but I just wanted to point out that there might be some logic behind that move.
Again, they can do like more rollouts with him than they could with Dalton and things like that.
He's much
so
more mobile.
There's an opportunity there. I mean, another rumor that circulated for the Cowboys QB was, would they make a deal with the Bears for Mitch Trubisky? And I'm like,
or as everyone in Chicago likes to say, Mitch Trubinsky.
Yeah, Well, they make him extra. They got to make him Polish. It's Chicago. Hey there, Trubinsky over there. I'm having my brat and my Polish with them grilled on it. Yeah. So because he's mobile, and again, the offensive line is learning. Again, you got offensive line learning along the way. So there was some logic there, and I laughed at that. I got that text from our good buddy Sam from the Fantasy Baseball. And then I think it got a little bit of leverage on sports radio. Does a trade with the Cowboys make sense for Mitch to go there? And again, I'd rather have Stafford than Mitch if there was a picking game and this was.
I mean, I think that's obvious, but I'm glad.
Conversation, but
I'm glad we at least have that common ground.
Yeah, because if you're viewing something as like, that's a lesser of two evils, because while Stafford may not read the defense the greatest, he reads it better than Trubisky, who can't read it at all. So
I'm not sure he can read.
Yeah, I know.
That would be the first issue with Mitch Trubisky.
Thank God they traded up for him and skipped Pat Mahomes and
I think
Deshaun Watson, and it must be a perfect time to start talking about the Bears.
Yeah, I think we could probably do an entire episode about, what is that, the 2017 draft, where Ryan Pace traded up from number 3 to number 2, not to draft a generational quarterback that has won a Super Bowl already in Pat Mahomes or Deshaun Watson. He drafted Mitch Trubisky and
who played 12 games?
Yeah.
12 games?
12 games at North Carolina. I don't know. I had never heard of the guy before that. Not that I'm a draft aficionado.
I wasn't even sure that North Carolina played football.
Yeah, I mean, they've kind of been off
basketball,
the map for a while. Yeah. Hilarious. The Bears just make me laugh constantly, especially Bears fans. Especially since they are now 5-1. This year,
bullshit.
Inexplicably.
Bullshit.
But if you notice, I noticed the other day, basically Chicago Bears and fraud were words together that were trending on the internet. I think the Bleacher Report had an article. The headline was something about Chicago Bears being frauds. The Ringer had this similar thing. So the general consensus is 5-1 is complete bullshit. I can tell you firsthand, the Lions, the pathetic Lions, if all DeAndre Swift had to do was hold on to a ball in the end zone to clinch that victory, that they shouldn't have even been in that position to give up the lead in the first place. But one drop pass is the Lions are 3-3 or whatever they'd be, and the Bears are, well, I guess they'd be 4-2. But I feel like they are the luckiest 5-1 possible. Just ridiculous stuff. I try not to watch them if I don't have to, but I have to hear about them so much on Chicago Sports Talk Radio.
Yeah, I got some numbers for you.
Oh, sweet.
The Lions have the number 24th ranked offense.
Wow.
The Bears, the 5-1 Bears, have the 28th ranked offense in the NFL. They average, the Bears' strong suit's supposed to be their running game. They average 90 yards a game, which they can't even, possess the ball for 100 yards a game, which is pretty dismal. And that 90 yards is padded from when before Montgomery kind of took over the full-time duties. The Bears defense, it's interesting. They rank out on, so you have to take the average per game now, because if you take total yards, it's not, because people have had bye weeks now.
Yeah.
So you have to take the average yards per game. So they rank out 7, which is interesting because they're only 14 against the run and 11 against the pass. I don't know how that ranks out to an average of 7 total yards allowed, but then if you just looked at total yards allowed, they're 14. So when you and then in average the Lions are 19. And the reason I'm drawing that comparison,
they must be getting a lot of turnovers or something.
Yeah, they are getting a decent amount of turnovers. They're plus in turnovers, but
this is what they do. They limp along with their better than average defense and zero offense. They turn the ball. They get people to turn the ball over. That's how they made a Super Bowl with Rex Grossman as their quarterback a few years back.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean,
this is their recipe for.
I think opportunistic is the way to put it, but it doesn't get you, even if you make the playoffs, it doesn't get you anywhere. That well, I guess with Grossman they went to the Super Bowl, but that was embarrassing.
Can't believe that actually happened.
But like, they really have the statistics of a 3-3 club or a 2-4 club.
That's what they look like. I mean, if you watch the games, that's I mean, the bit I've seen, that's what they look like. They look like a 500 team. They're not dog shit, but they're not they're not like a world beater that you think should be a Super Bowl contender, even though the super fans all think they are every year.
Every year they're going to go to the Super Bowl. I mean, this is just, and like you said, we could probably do a whole episode on this, and we probably should. But this is one of the most poorly run franchises in the history of the NFL.
Wow,
that
might transition well into the line.
Back to the line, but but seriously, like the McCaskey family should sell it to someone like a Ricketts who gives a shit about putting a good squad and gets a good GM in there who's really gonna put a good team together. I mean, let's be honest. Like, the only reason part of the reason the defense is as good as it is because they fell into Mac. It was only because the Raiders were looking to dump contracts. Yeah. Like the Cowboys ended up with Cooper too. Like, it all happened. Like the Bears did not do anything to get Mac except have enough money and cap space around to take him from the Raiders.
Draft collateral that they
it wasn't a strategic preseason move. It was luck.
Yeah.
And he's part of the thing that makes the defense go. And that guy's truly a game changer. But outside of that, I mean, they part ways with Ditka when after like 2-11-5 seasons in a row. I mean, who the fuck does that?
Wow.
Like they're just they're an embarrassment.
Well, you mentioned ownership should sell, and that's a common topic on Detroit Sports Talk Radio, and I feel it's a waste of time to talk about because no NFL owner is ever going to sell. These franchises print money, as the cliche goes. There's no reason to even bring it up almost, because in Detroit, the Ford family has owned them for 70 years or whatever it is. They're not going to sell. So I don't even bring it up. And I don't even have a big problem necessarily with the Ford ownership. They've tried pretty much everything in Detroit. They've gone with brand new GMs that have experience from a winning organization, like Bob Quinn came from the Patriots. They've gone, radically different, the Matt Millen, the name that should never be spoken again on this podcast. His regime, he came from the booth. He thought he had great ideas, and he ended up being the worst GM of all time. They've gone every direction. They've gone every direction with coaches. They've gone defensive-minded coaches. They've gone offensive-minded coaches. They've gone, big, long experienced coaches. It doesn't matter what the Lions do. They've always made the wrong move, whatever it is. But they try. They're trying different things all the time. So it's not like I don't feel that the Fords and I know the McCaskies take a bad rap in Chicago, but I don't think it's that they don't care. I think it's literally they don't know what they're doing, and when it comes down to it. And the problem is there's no remedy for that. Like I said before, these families are not going to sell these teams. There's just no reason for them to give up other than the fans just wanting it to happen. It's just not as sad as it is, you just have to resign to the hand you're dealt, and these owners are not going away. So
and the McCaskies really run it business-like, and that's part of the problem. Which you can't really fault someone for totally, because it is their business. It is how they make their money. But they really do run it like a business. They won't go crazy like Jerry Jones or some other owners, or Robert Kraft or anything like that. They run it like a business. So you're gonna get what you get within the structure of what has been given to the GM to make moves on. But they really need, like, they shouldn't have to worry. They're the owners, right? They shouldn't have to worry about what their GM is doing, but they haven't been able to pick the right GM. They need a good GM in there is what they need. But fuck it, I don't care. Fuck the Bears.
Yeah, I'm about done talking about the Bears.
I'm done talking about the Bears. You wanna preview a little excitement? Big Ten football starting this weekend.
Well, before we get into that, I do have some more Lions thoughts.
Oh, geez, wow. You're still going on about those suckers, huh?
Well, the thing we talked about before is, everyone wants it to get torn down, mainly because I want them to tank. I want them to lose every game possible so we can get Trevor Lawrence, the number one pick in the, perceived number one pick in this year's draft. I don't see how that, unless he gets injured or something crazy happens, I don't see how anyone else is going to go number one. And I mean, honestly, I think he's a better number one pick than we've seen in quite some time, even without Tua or whoever else. So that's what's exacerbating this conversation about trading Stafford, getting rid of Patricia, getting rid of Bob Quinn, because we want everything to fall apart so we can actually get the number one overall pick with having the worst record. Unfortunately, the Lions went ahead and beat the Jacksonville Jaguars last weekend, to get our second win of the season, which basically, as bad as your NFC least is, cements the fact that the Lions are not going to have the number one pick because they already have 2 wins. And I have a feeling there's going to be a 0 or 1 win team between that or maybe the Jets.
The Jets are bad.
Yeah. So it's just another frustrating example of how the Lions, the players are trying to win. The coaches are trying to win. The GM's trying to save his job. So I can't fault them for winning, but it's just frustrating. It's obvious what would be good for the franchise and for the fan base overall is to lose games so we can get better players. And they just never do it. They win meaningless games either in the middle of the season or the end of the season. A couple years ago, they famously beat the shit out of Green Bay inexplicably, 31-0. I believe that was Matt Patricia's first year as coach, but they were so far out of it. It was a meaningless game. They would have had like the number 3 pick overall. I forget what it was, but they moved to number 8 because of that. And they pick up a tight end, TJ Hawkinson, with that pick. It's like, oh my God, why are we winning these games? It's just puts us in the most frustrating position possible. Because I don't want to root against the team I've rooted for 40 plus years. I have to, though. They've put me in this situation. There's nothing to be gained by winning games at this point because change has to happen. So,
I mean, one thing that's drastically different about football versus baseball, like you don't hear the conversation about football teams tanking.
Well, I think it's become kind of the more, as you've seen it in baseball, you've seen it work in baseball over the last 10 years. A little less than that, but I think that's kind of becoming the topic throughout all of sports, and you can see how it can. I mean, it's happened in the NBA too. That's been happening for a long time, but to lesser success, I think. But yeah, you're right. You are hearing that more and more in football, and I've heard it for a long time in Detroit. But I think maybe we're hearing it more this year than ever since it's such a fucked up COVID year, and you kind of don't really know what to make of this season in general. The best thing would be to lose for Lawrence, I guess is the phrase, because he does seem like a generational talent. You've seen how a quarterback can change everything quickly in Kansas City. I mean, you saw it with Pat Mahomes, how he can transform that might be an outlier. It is an outlier. But you've also got Lamar Jackson. Deshaun Watson obviously is the talent, but what's around him has been a disaster.
Yeah, and then getting rid of Hopkins did not help
Yeah.
measures any.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and then they had to get rid of a coach and GM because of that trade. So,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean the quarterback doesn't solve everything, but it certainly helps if you've got the right one, and that's what Lions fans are hoping for because we've given up on Stafford. But you're right. I've droned on long enough
Jesus.
about
Good God.
the Lions.
Hey, guess what? We're doing more than one of these. So just
what? Every week I'll get to talk about this. So buckle up, people. I might have to break out the paper bag hat again.
Oh, that was, by the way, I forgot to tell you post show.
It's sitting right over here. I've got it ready to go anytime they pull another.
That was fantastic.
Anytime they're ready to pull another same old Lions.
Well done, Smitty. Well done.
I've got it ready to go. But
well done.
Well, yeah, like you said, we should transition over into college football, which my whole life I've actually been a bigger fan of college football than I have of the NFL for whatever reason. Well, I know what reason, because the Lions have sucked my entire life, and there's more interesting things with so many more teams and so much more going on with college.
Ryan, not to drone on about the Lions, but I got to interrupt you for a second, and nothing gives me greater pleasure and makes me smile more than I think of the Lions Wayne Font years. Wayne Fonts was a coach that every player loved, and somehow, speaking of never losing enough to get a high draft pick, they would always rally around Wayne to save his job year after year. So come on, those were some glory years. You have a lot of mediocre 8-8 teams in there just to save Wayne's job. Those were
anytime they had a big marquee Monday Night Football game, they would win it for Wayne.
I always remember this image of Wayne like and then his fat ass body sort of like trotting off the field in victory, like, I'm gonna be here another year.
I've got that picture. I've actually worked that into a Limp Ditka's graphic you'll be seeing at some point in this. I know exactly the photo you're talking about.
Yeah, I love the Wayne Fonts years.
Welcome to Wayne Fonts. That's Tanner's favorite saying, whatever that means, but it makes me laugh every time. But yeah, the winningest and losingest coach in Lions history, Mr. Wayne Fonts.
There you go.
But yeah, we're done talking about the Lions, aren't we? Okay.
But yeah, now we are.
Well, let's move to college. I was talking about how I love college probably more than the pros. The weird thing is this year everything's weird about this year, but I haven't gotten into college football at all. But that can be easily explained by the Big Ten hasn't even started. The Big Ten starting this weekend finally.
Big Ten.
So I'm getting fired up for that on Saturday. The Spartans are taking on Rutgers. I believe they're a 15-point favorite already, even though no one's played a game and nobody knows anything about the new regime in East Lansing under Mel Tucker, the BadMotherFucker. I'm excited about the potential of him. I don't know a whole lot about Mel Tucker other than he's got ties to Michigan State. I believe he started his coaching career as grad assistant, or I forget exactly what it was, but early career with the Spartans. That's why he's now the head coach after the unceremonious exodus of the greatest coach in Michigan State history, in my mind, Mark D'Antonio, with multiple wins over Ohio State, Michigan, Rose Bowl win, Cotton Bowl win. Just really turn that program into a national. I would say a national power, but they moved up to maybe a second tier of college football where they were always a third or fourth tier. I wouldn't put them they were never in quite the realm of the Alabamas and now the Clemsons and USC's, and I'll even give you credit, the Notre Dames. But we got in the conversation under D'Antonio, which was a fucking blast for 10 plus years. Unfortunately, that kind of came to a grinding halt over the last few years, where it was obvious that the game had passed D'Antonio by, where his offense was just anemic. It looked like it was more than a 10-year-old scheme idea. It was just not productive at all, and it just got to the point where it was obvious he was not going to he was too stubborn to make any changes. he wouldn't even fire any of his staff. He would just sort of move his current staff around. He'd move maybe a linebackers coach to the defensive coordinator. I forget how it all worked, but he basically just shuffled the chairs on the deck. So there was also controversy. There was like a couple lawsuits against him that I think were probably frivolous, but there's also the weird Larry Nassar thing. It's just the devastating, horrendous sex abuse scandal in the gymnastics department that isn't directly related to the football program, but by association, it kind of dragged down Michigan State in general because of the gross negligence of the leadership of the university that cost the athletic director his job. I believe the president. Lots of massive changes happened. So while D'Antonio has no responsibility, he's kind of pulled into all that, and it was just kind of a weird time. It was obvious that change needed to be made. So I'm not, even though I do think D'Antonio's the best coach of State history, it was time for him to go.
Yeah.
At the time, I don't remember thinking of any real prime candidates that I was dying to get to come to State that made a ton of sense. I wish we had this podcast back then, because it would have been top of mind for sure, like who the replacements were. But Mel Tucker was certainly not one that popped in my head. I had never heard of him. He's been the coach at Colorado for the last couple of years. To some success. I wouldn't say he was like a meteoric rise through the college ranks. I think he got the job basically because of his ties to Michigan State in his past. I think it makes sense. I'm definitely willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. Love to see what he can do. He is inheriting a football team at probably the most challenging of any situation a new coach could possibly have. Taking over from a legend in State history in a kind of a controversial, strange time. Also, during a global pandemic, he's taking over. So, no limited practices in the spring. How recruiting has been happening, I don't know. An established big name coach has far less challenges when it comes to recruiting than a brand new coach in a region he hasn't been coaching in. So he's starting with a lot of things against him, which is unfair, but that's just how it is. So I'm not expecting a whole lot out of State this year. I mentioned earlier they're the 15-point favorites over Rutgers. They
drew a good first game. So
that's a good start. Yeah, if you're not going to play a preseason, if you're going to go right into your conference schedule, that's a good way to start.
That's a good draw.
Rutgers is hardly a Big Ten team. That's actually a whole nother subject we could bring up.
Was it Big 13 now? Is it
why
13
the fuck? Why the 14?
I mean, it's
why the fuck
14,
are they?
It's ridiculous.
Why the fuck are they in the Big Ten? It's just beyond me. But whatever. I'm looking forward to Big Ten football starting this weekend finally. So hopefully I'll get back into the college mode. For you've been watching Notre Dame football all season long. So you have a different perspective on college this year than I do.
Yeah, Notre Dame, except for the rain-filled game last week, has kind of been rolling through their soft part of their schedule.
Number 3 in the nation, Notre Dame.
Number 3 in the nation this week, despite limping to a 12-7 rain-filled game.
Limping,
week,
I like what you did there.
Yeah, limping the Ditka last week. They moved up a spot to number 3. They started preseason ranking number 5, and now they're up to number 3. This is a familiar spot for Notre Dame throughout the last 3 to 5 years under Brian Kelly. What tends to happen, and we're going to see it hopefully not happen on November 7th, because every year, because of their affiliation now with the ACC and then playing SEC games and getting those teams on the schedule, they get to play host to number 1 Clemson.
Wow.
November 7th.
That's going to be awesome.
That is going to be, that's going to be the test again. And
is it in South Carolina or in South Bend?
No, they're hosting. So it's in South Bend.
Ooh, there's a chance.
It's Saturday prime time.
Nice.
And the way these games have gone, when the game's at Notre Dame it's sort of a feel out first half where Notre Dame's right in it, whether they're leading by 3 or down 14-10 or whatever, but it's totally a game. And then it's just a complete defensive disaster in the second half of the game. Like it's almost as if the opposing number one team comes out of the locker room with a game plan and Notre Dame just says, well, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing because it's close, and they get blown away. So I'm hoping for a better outcome, but this weekend they're in Pitt. They're 10-point favorites. I would actually personally, since you can legally gamble in Illinois now, I'm not saying I'm doing this, but I would take Notre Dame.
Do it.
With the
For
negative
the 10. Wow.
I think they're gonna win convincingly against Pitt. They should win convincingly against Pitt. If they don't, though, that's a lingering question because Pitt's probably. I mean, they blew Florida State out 52-0, but Florida State's more like in a transition moment. But
yeah,
the defense will remain the question mark. The offense seems to be rolling and fine. It's the defense will be the question against Clemson and other ranked teams that they play in the latter part of the schedule this year. So, but Clemson's going to be the first. I believe they're the first ranked team they're playing. I'm trying to remember if I feel like someone was ranked towards the 22 or something in one of those first few games, but they're not ranked now. Yeah, they're not ranked now, but it doesn't. The real challenge that's presented is Clemson, and that's going to be the real measuring stick. They've continually looked like shit in bowl games, so who really gives a shit about what these rankings even mean?
Yeah,
until you play somebody.
I'm glad you bring up rankings because I almost think we should start doing our own weekly rankings, like the LDP top 10 or something like that. We'll brainstorm that, figure that one out because the rankings are so ridiculous. I haven't seen what this week's are, but for several weeks, Ohio State was still number 2 in the country, even though they haven't played a game. So I don't know how we're doing that calculus, but rankings. I think that goes back to preseason rankings in general are just ludicrous. How it gives big name teams such a huge advantage.
Yeah.
Because they just go on reputation basically. Oh, they've got to be number 2 in the country. Well they haven't done anything. Yeah. So it's almost like there should be no rankings until 8 weeks into the season, which is that even doesn't work this year because not all the teams are even playing. But over in a normal season, I would propose that kind of like how the BCS works, or the whatever they call it now, the college football playoff, where they don't start doing their ranking shows until 2 months into the season. I think that's a little more responsible, but those are influenced by the preseason polls still, which is it's bullshit. We all know it. I think we can get to a better system.
I mean, the only thing I'll agree with on a preseason poll is if basically the squad's coming back and they put the championship team at number 1. I've got no problem with that.
Yeah.
But that's like,
I think they should just abolish them altogether because it leads to trouble down the road where you give credit to teams that haven't earned it. And that influences the playoffs. And I think that's crap. But I've got a whole nother, I want to talk about the playoff system and maybe the next podcast, or maybe as we get closer to the playoffs. I've got ideas on how to run the playoffs, but
I mean, college football has always been flawed with the ranking system.
That's also part of the fun of it because we idiots like us get to do a podcast and debate shit like this. So that makes it eternally entertaining because there are no perfect answers in it, but we've all got our ideas. So it's fun to talk about. So I'm glad it exists, and I'm glad we're here to talk about it.
All right. So I think that's it. Other than
if we're done with college or if we're done with Notre Dame, I want to bring over.
Oh, we got some shit we could make up, right?
One thing we need to mention is you and I have been doing a baseball podcast for the last year, Major League A-holes at majorleagueaholes.com. We're going to borrow a segment from that we do every week and call it "Shit We Couldn't Make Up." It's funny shit we couldn't make up. It was the original title, but just the ridiculous things we've seen in baseball pretty much every week. I saw a similar ridiculous thing. This is actually 2 weeks ago in college football now, maybe more than that now, but the Florida Gators, the number 10 Florida Gators, coach Dan Mullen made an impassioned plea a few weeks ago to his students and his fan base to pack the swamp, was his quote, as Florida governor opened up all sporting venues and everything in his state to as many people as want to show up to anything they want. They can do that now. And
seems responsible.
Yeah. Well, we won't get too deep into the politics because that's a swamp we'll never get out of. But hey, but Dan Mullen, wanted to take advantage of that and have a completely packed stadium for, I forget what game it was going to be against, probably Georgia or some Southern team that I don't give a fuck about, but imploring his fans to put their health in peril and go watch a football game. And immediately, I believe it was just days after he made that impassioned plea, that he actually tested positive for COVID-19, which I just couldn't, not that I wish illness upon anyone, but it just couldn't be any more poetic justice or karma or whatever you want to call it, that to
call it karma, call it fate.
Yeah, irresponsible plea to a fan base to put their health in peril ended up in his own health risk. He's since recovered, I believe, but the Gators, have had to shut down subsequently because they've had close to 50 COVID positive cases. They're hoping to start the program back up on Monday, I read.
Sounds like that swamp is dirty.
Yeah, the swamp. Yeah, swamp is just the perfect analogy for it. So just the irony of a coach being that irresponsible, and then himself and his program being slapped in the face with it's a dangerous disease out there that they're downplaying. It's fucking ridiculous. So it couldn't be any more perfect irony. And I hope no one is seriously affected by it. Like I said, I don't wish it upon anybody, but when you hear fools like that in positions of power, playing with people's lives, it's a scary thing. And I hopefully we can learn a lesson from it, but that's just some shit I couldn't make up.
All right. So I'm going to switch gears and shit you couldn't make up to the NFL. And
Nice.
I'm wearing my shit you couldn't make up. This is not a CeeDee Lamb 88 Cowboys jersey. This is a Des Bryant 88 Cowboys jersey.
Yes.
And in news this week, because the NFL's interesting compared to other sports. They always seem really willing to bring players back and try them out when they haven't played football for 2 years or 2.5 years. And we all know Des tried to come back a few years back and ended up breaking his leg before he could even get it going. And He's back. He's on the practice squad for the Baltimore Ravens because they're in need of help at the receiver position. And he's been posting workouts on social media. I mean, this almost sounds like a Ballers storyline from the great HBO series.
Right.
And so they have signed him to the practice squad, and we may see Des Bryant back in the NFL before the season's over. And that just is crazy to me because his last NFL game was 2017. He's 31 years old. That doesn't mean anything if he's kept himself in shape and that he's a big target that can go up when he's healthy mentally. He can go up and get the ball and score a lot of touchdowns. The problem, seeing it firsthand, was a year the Cowboys did not make the playoffs. It was the last year Des Bryant was on the team, and he had the most drops of the end zone than as any receiver in the NFL. In fact, I think he led the NFL in total drops, and he had gimmies that Romo put up high for him to grab with both hands, and his Mickey Mouse gloves he wore, and he just did not make the catches. So I love Des Bryant as a receiver. We all know he really won probably that Packers NFL game, but as Lions and Cowboys fans, we know the haunting term, he did not complete the process.
That's a whole segment coming up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a whole
I've got that one
segment coming
planned
up.
out.
Yeah, we will cover that. But so that's my shit you can't make up. A person who hasn't played in the NFL in 3 years is coming back to maybe be a possible star receiver again in the NFL, which you'd never you rarely hear this about baseball. You might because of injuries and stuff like that, but
No.
not a lot. If you don't mind indulging me for a few more minutes, Ryan,
That's what I've been doing this whole fucking time. So
I
go
know,
ahead.
yeah, there is a subject I do want to bring up in regards to the NFL, and that's COVID-19 in the NFL versus other sports. And I didn't think this really warranted a shit you couldn't make up, but I just want to read some comments from John Gruden because the Raiders are the latest team to have like 5 players test positive, and the game's up in the air again. They moved it off of Sunday Night Football.
Yeah,
It's
I
now
saw
slated
that.
for 4:00, and we'll see what happens. But it's important to the order of Gruden's comments when questioned about one of his offensive linemen. I'm concerned, Gruden said, about being without his linemen. Then he followed it up with, I'm really more concerned about Trent's health more than anything. There is a lot to be said in that comment as far as I'm concerned and how the NFL has been handling COVID-19. I feel like compared to the way baseball handled it, and even more so, the NHL and NBA created amazing bubbles that prevented any issues whatsoever. But I feel like they're really doing everything in their power to play the games no matter what because of the length of the season. And I feel like in the end, it's going. I hope it doesn't. I mean, I hope this works out, and I hope they're doing it right. But it doesn't feel like they're doing it right. It feels like Tennessee had another positive case, and I thought for sure they were going to get canceled again this week, and somehow they played the game.
Yeah.
Now they played the game with like some practice squad guys and that, but you're talking about we don't need to go into the details of COVID-19, but you got up to a 2-week period of where someone could end up still testing positive. So, I mean, the risk factor involved with their sort of, and you said it best, Ryan, I think this is how they are approaching the game. And I think that's something to take away from Gruden's comments, is just that they're kind of like they're the gladiators of sports, and they're going to just beat this thing. And
if half the team dies of COVID, they'll bring up more players somehow into the game. So they don't give a fuck is what it comes down to.
Yeah, so I just wanted to comment on that while I'm very happy to be able to watch football and everything, I don't know that they have handled it in the best way. At least I feel like they haven't.
Yeah, it feels a little creepy watching. I feel more creepy watching college football in a way because at least pro players are paid and they can, they've got their careers. They can make that decision on their own. Where college players, even before COVID, are completely exploited by the universities, by the system. They are trying to make their money, trying to put themselves in a position where they're set for life, but they're not there yet. So our entertainment comes at their cost. With pros, like I said, I don't feel as bad for it. They're making they're grown adults. They're making their own decisions to do this, but it does feel like the NFL, above all the other leagues, just is far more concerned with getting their games in, however they have to get them in, far more than they're worried about their players. And that's just sort of the nature of football. It's always been the nature of football, I think, versus the other sports. It feels a little gross, and it's like, oh, we just had 20 positive tests. Big deal. We'll just push the game back a week and we'll be fine. The concern over it seems to be far less in the NFL or in football in general than anywhere else. We'll just tough it out. It'll be fine.
Exactly. Yeah.
We don't know the long-term effects of a positive test, if that has lingering effects over time, over a lifespan. We don't know, because we do know it affects the lungs and it affects the heart, and hoping that it all works out for people that have tested positive down the road, but we just don't fucking know. So it's just kind of the way the NFL is cavalierly soldiering on through no matter what happens. It's a little disconcerting, to say the least. So I agree with you.
Yeah. So I just wanted to, since this is the first episode and we're 6 weeks into this thing and seen a lot happen on both college and NFL. And I wholeheartedly agree with you. It feels really gross and dirty with college football because that's just about the school making bank.
Yep.
So
Lots of bank.
So I think on that note,
yeah, I don't have anything else unless you've got anything else. You've got any shit Pete forgot like we do in the baseball podcast?
No, that was
okay.
I took copious notes this week to
Nice.
try to avoid that. So I think,
I like it. It's a good segment.
Blow the whistle.
Yeah, how do we end this? I always say this,
I don't know.
This podcast is over, but that's a baseball reference.
Yeah,
so I'll have to figure that out over time.
We're gonna blow the whistle and make this first podcast official and call it over.
Well, in the meantime, check us out on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel going as long as we can. We did lose our YouTube channel for our baseball podcast through questionable reasons. We're still not sure how we lost that. It may have been Trevor Bauer, a Cincinnati Reds pitcher, that shut us down for making disparaging comments about him. It may have been a fellow user, Cool Hand Luke Skywalker, on YouTube may have shut us down. I'm not sure, but so far the Limp Ditka's channel is still running on YouTube, so we'll keep that going as long as we can. You can always find us at limpditkas.com. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all at Limp Ditkas. I was able to secure that name in all 3 platforms, so I was happy about that. We are a podcast, obviously, but we are just launching. So right now we're on Spotify and one other one I can't remember the name of, but you can, if you really want the podcast.
Very popular.
Yeah, right now it's anchor.fm/limpditkas. That's where the portal for all the podcasts will be. Eventually we will be on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, all of them. Anywhere you like to find a podcast, we will be there. I'm not sure exactly when, but hopefully soon. In the meantime, we've been doing a weekly baseball podcast, as we mentioned, Major League A-Holes at majorleagueaholes.com. Check that out. Doing some cross promotion here. We're going to do this every week. So yeah, if you like what you hear with our football commentary, we've got the similar idea with our baseball team affiliations. So check us out everywhere. And that's about it. So yeah, we're going to blow the whistle. Let's call this podcast over.
There you go. Peace.
Peace.